Today we continue Citta-nupassana, contemplations of consciousness. Consciousness is a part of the mind. In the teachings of the Buddha, there are two component parts of the mind, Citta and Cetasika, consciousness and mental factors. Citta, consciousness, is that which is aware of an object. It is the bare awareness of an object. Cetasika, mental factors, are what colors consciousness. They arise together with the consciousness and modify the consciousness. Lobha, greed, is a mental factors. Dosa, hatred or anger, are mental factors. Moha, delusion, is a mental factors. Saddha, faith, piññā, wisdom, are mental factors. When these mental factors arise, they arise together with certain kinds of consciousness. Though consciousness is emphasized in this section, Citta and Cetasika, consciousness and mental factors, cannot be separated. When you observe consciousness, you also observe the mental factors. When you have anger in your mind and note it, angry, 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 you practice the contemplation of this consciousness. Angry means your mind is angry, or I have a consciousness that is accompanied by anger. So when you note angry, 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 you are practicing these kinds of meditation, contemplations of consciousness, Citta-nupassana. Other types of consciousness should be noted also. Different kinds of consciousness are mentioned in the Sutta. Saraga, with lust. Vitaraga, without lust. Sadosa, with hate. Vitadosa, without hate. Samoha, with delusion. Vitamoha, without delusion. Sankheta, constricted consciousness, refers to a types of consciousness you have when you are oppressed by Tinameda, sloth and torpor. When you are sleepy, then your mind, your consciousness is constricted. Viketa, scattered consciousness, refers to a type of consciousness you have when you are restless. The mind has become great means jhana consciousness. The The mind that has not become great means the other types of consciousness pertaining to the sense sphere are maggo. Suppressible consciousness, Sauttara, means types of consciousness pertaining to the sense sphere and form sphere. Anuttara Citta, unsuppressible consciousness, means types of consciousness pertaining to the formless sphere. Concentrated consciousness, Samahita Citta, is one with excess concentration, Upachara Samadhi, and absorption concentration, Appana Samadhi. Asamahita Citta, unconcentrated consciousness, means consciousness that is scattered and unfocused. Vimutta Citta, freed consciousness, is one that is free from mental defilements, momentarily or temporarily. It is vipassana consciousness or jhana consciousness. Avimutta Citta, unfreed consciousness, means consciousness that is not free from mental defilements. You need to know Abhidhamma to understand all these different kinds of consciousness. However, it is not necessary to be able to differentiate the various kinds of consciousness by their respective names. It is sufficient that you are aware when you are sleepy and note sleepy, sleepy, sleepy. When you are distracted, you note distracted, distracted, distracted. So it is sufficient that you are aware of whatever you experience. These types of consciousness have to be noted whenever they arise in your mind. During the contemplations of consciousness, one consciousness is the objects of another. They cannot arise at the same moment. For example, you cannot touch your right index finger with your right index finger. You can touch the right index finger with your thumb, etc. They cannot arise at the same moment. The consciousness that is the objects of meditation arose just a little bit earlier, and the noting consciousness arises just a little bit later. But you can call them present because there is a very small difference in time when you contemplate on consciousness. When different kinds of consciousness arise and fade away, you take note of these specific types when they arise. When you observe consciousness in this way, you will come to see that there is consciousness only and no person, no being, that is its agent. You will also recognize that since it arises and fades away every moment, it is impermanent. When you see its impermanence, you won't cling to it through tanha, craving. You won't cling to it through deity, wrong view. When there is no clinging, there can be no formations of karma, no sankhara, and you will be able to achieve freedom from suffering. But there may be those who want to know how they are to be understood according to abhidhamma. For such people, the commentary give some information, some translation. Saraga Citta, consciousness with lust, means the 8 kinds of consciousness associated with attachment or greed. Vitaraga Citta, consciousness without lust, means mundane, profitable, and indeterminate consciousness. However, there is the comprehension of states and not a collection of states. So the supramundane consciousness is not applicable here, even in respect of one of the 2 terms. Sadosa Citta, consciousness with hate, means 2 kinds of consciousness associated with unpleasant feeling and consciousness with hate. Consciousness without hate means mundane, wholesome, and indeterminate consciousness. The remaining 10 kinds of unwholesome consciousness do not come under either of the terms. Samoha Citta, consciousness with delusion, means the 2 kinds of consciousness accompanied by vicikicca, doubt, and agitation, uddhacca. But since delusion arises in all unwholesome consciousness, the remaining unwholesome consciousness are also applicable here. So, in this diet, all the 12 kinds of unwholesome consciousness are included. Vita Moha Citta, Consciousness without delusion means mundane, wholesome, and indeterminate consciousness. Sanketa Citta, constricted consciousness means those accompanied by sloth and torpor. Awakened Citta, scattered mind, scattered consciousness means that accompanied by restlessness. Megata consciousness that have become great means material sphere and immaterial sphere consciousness, and amegata citta consciousness that have not become great means sense sphere consciousness. Sa-uttara citta, suppressible consciousness means sense sphere consciousness, and anuttara citta, unsuppressible, means material and immaterial sphere consciousness. Here, suppressible may also be taken as material sphere and unsuppressible as immaterial sphere only. Samahita citta, concentrated consciousness, means that accompanied by absorption concentration or excess concentration, and unconcentrated consciousness means that which is without either kinds of concentration. Vimutta citta, freed consciousness, means the consciousness which is liberated by either momentary or temporary abandonment. And avimutta citta, unfreed consciousness, means consciousness which is without either kinds of abandonment. Again, since it is vipassana, no supramundane consciousness is applicable. Now we go to the another topic. Citta consciousness considered under 11 ways, according to Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. And Buddha said, Yang kenji vinyanam atita nagata pichopanam ijatawa bedawa olarikawa sukumawa hinawa panitawa yandure santikewa sabba vinyanam nitamama nisohamasami na miso attati Ivamitam yata buddha samapiñaya tattapam. Buddha said, whatever vijnana, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or fine, inferior or superior, far or near, should be seen, should be experienced with all knowledge as they truly are, that this is not mine, this is not me, This is not myself. There is the exaltation to contemplate on citta, consciousness, under 11 heads, such as past, present, or future, etc., analytically, so as to bring out anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanent, suffering, and non-self characteristics of consciousness. We need to understand these discourses that contemplating on anicca, impermanence, is the same as nisohamasami. This is not me. Contemplating on dukkha, suffering, is same as contemplating on nibbānassa. This is not mine. And contemplating on anatta, non-self, and contemplating on namiso atta. This is not myself, are the same. This is not me, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. Nitamama nisohamasami namiso atta. Of the four aggregates of nama, it must be said that vijnana, consciousness of mind, is the most prominent. The mental concomitants such as desire, hatred, etc. are described as mind in everyday language. Desiring mind, liking mind, hating mind. In the commentaries too, its position are given first on mind. Then only they are followed by cetasika as their concomitants. Here we also have to elaborate on mind to considerable extent. The past vijnana may be the mind which has existed in previous lives. It may also be the mind which has occurred during our younger days, or the mind which had happened since then during all those intervening days, months, or years. Even if we take today, there was the mind which has arisen prior to the present moment. Amongst all these possible types of past vijnana, that the mind of the past existences has not come over to the present life, that it has ceased in those existences, should be very obvious to those people, those members of the Buddhist faith who have taken an interest in Dhamma matters. But for those who have strong attachment to Atta, it is not easy for such knowledge and understanding to arise in them. Because those people with Atta attachment hold to the view that vijnana, consciousness, is soul, self, a living entity. When the body of past existences broke up and perished, the vijnana of the past existences left the old body and transmigrated to the new body of the present life. It has remained there since conception in the mother's womb till the present time. We reside there till the time of death, when it will live again to a fresh body in a new existence. They believe. For those people who have strong attachment to Atta self. So when you know all the consciousness with respect to the present life, the consciousness with respect to the past and future existences could also be understood. If you know the mind, knowing the mind is knowing the cetasika, mental concomitants that accompany the mind, and also the material base on which mind is dependent. So Visuddhiyā has said, as quoted above, Sabbe Atita Nagata Pichopanna Dhamma. All past, future, and present dhammas are understood by him. So yogi have to contemplate the mind with regard to three aspects of time. As yogi knows in this way, that starting from rebirth consciousness, patisandhi citta, continuous series of mind arises and vanishes. It is clear to him that the mind of previous existences has ceased then and there, and does not reach this existence. It is also clear that the minds of the present existence cease at the respective moments of their becoming. So the yogi is in a position to discern all the past, future, and present mind with his personal knowledge. So we have to reflect how we discern them. The consciousness of the past does not reach the present, It is ceased then and there. So you understand the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta of the consciousness. Now it is clear. The consciousness of the present life does not go over to the next existence. The consciousness of the present life is ceasing and vanishing away presently. And so it is of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. How about the consciousness of the future life? The consciousness of the future life will not reach the future of a much later existence. The consciousness of the future life will cease and perish at the moment of its becoming and is therefore of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. That is how consciousness is considered roughly with respect to 3 periods of times. To the yogi who keeps on noting the rising and falling of the abdomen, when thinking arises, he knows in this way, thinking. As soon as he captures the thinking vanishes away. When he hears, he notes hearing. Then yogi captures the hearing consciousness. Hearing consciousness vanish. As he does not think like the ordinary person that keeps hearing for a long time, he finds that he hears intermittently, hearing, disappearing, hearing, disappearing. The hearing consciousness vanishes in successive series of sections. In the same way, when noting the touching consciousness, it is seen disappearing quickly. When concentration is especially strong, the seeing consciousness arises and vanishes in quick succession. Smelling consciousness and tasting consciousness, yogi also captured, and they rise and vanish. The noting mind is also perceived to be alternately noting and disappearing. In short, with every noting, the object noted, as well as the knowing mind, keeps on arising and vanishing in pairs. To To the yogi who is thus perceiving the phenomena very clearly, the seeing consciousness does not reach the moment of noting, thinking, hearing. It vanishes at the instant of seeing. So he realized it is impermanent. In the same way, noting mind, thinking mind, and hearing mind do not reach the moments of seeing, etc. They disappear at the respective moments of noting, thinking, and hearing. So the yogi realizes they are impermanent. So you reflect in this way. The seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, touching consciousness, and thinking mind, etc., which appeared moments ago, do not reach the present moments of seeing, hearing, etc. These consciousness perish away and ceased, and so they are of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, impermanent, suffering, and non-self. The seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, touching consciousness, and thinking consciousness, which are presently arising, do not reach the next moment of seeing, hearing, etc. They are vanishing and ceasing now. And so they are of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. How about the future? The seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, etc., which will arise in future, will not reach the moment next to the future instant. These consciousness will perish away and therefore are of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Knowing in this way personally how vijnana, how consciousness arises and vanishes in your body, it can be inferred that just like the consciousness which has been noted, all the consciousness which remain to be noted, consciousness in other people, in the whole world, all consciousness are arising and vanishing. It can be concluded by inference that just as those consciousness which had been noted and are found to be impermanent, consciousness in other people will also be constantly ceasing and perishing. Those in the whole world too will be ceasing and perishing. So all consciousness, all citta are of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So now we have considered all types of consciousness, but there remains considerations of consciousness from some other aspects such as internally and externally, etc. Then we go to ijjhata and bheda. Yogi can consider the consciousness internally and externally. The consciousness which already has an internal object does not reach an external object. The consciousness which has external object does not reach an internal object. Sometimes consciousness has an internal object. Your consciousness is in your body, in your leg, in your head, etc. But sometimes your consciousness go other places, go to external object. So you note and you understand the consciousness which already has an internal object does not reach an external object. And the consciousness which has external object does not reach an internal object. While being fixed on the respective objects, the consciousness perishes and ceases. So is of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. And then we go to olarika and sukkuma. You can consider consciousness as gross and fine. You are noting every consciousness, you are observing every consciousness, and you capture various kinds of consciousness. Angry mind is gross. Other types of mind are fine compared to angry mind. Amongst angry minds, that which is violent enough to commit murder, to torture other people, cause destruction to others' people's properties, to speak abuses, threatening language is gross. Ordinary irritated mind is subtle, fine. Lobha. Greedy mind is soft compared to angry mind. But the greedy mind, which is intense enough to steal other people's properties, to commit wrong acts, to use low vulgar language is gross or coarse. ordinary desire or ordinary wish is fine. Deluded mind, ignorant mind is compared to greedy mind and angry mind is mild. But ignorant mind, which finds fault with and show disrespect to the true Buddha, disrespect to the true Dhamma and true Sangha, is gross. Ordinary doubting mind, perplexed mind is subtle. More subtle than all these akusala citta are kusala citta. And amongst the kusala citta, wholesome consciousness, gladness and heartiness are gross. Kusala citta, wholesome consciousness, which is tranquil, is fine. You are noting continuously. Yogi who is engaged in constant noting perceives while noting the arising and vanishing of gross as well as fine minds, that the coarse mind, the gross mind, does not reach the moment of arising of fine mind, and the fine mind does not reach the moment of arising of the gross mind. They vanish the respective moments of their arising. When you are contemplating the rising and falling of the abdomen, if the mind arises with lust, you note it as mind with lust, with desire. It is knowing the mind with lust as they truly are. Saragam vacitam, saragam citta, miti pajanati, in accordance with the Satipatthana Sutta. When noted in this way, the mind with lust ceases and is followed by a continuous stream of mind made up of kusala citta, wholesome consciousness of noting, and kiriya citta, vibhaka citta, and kusala javana citta, which are concerned with ordinary acts of seeing, hearing, etc. These kusala citta, kiriya citta, and vibhaka citta are noted as they arise: seeing, hearing, touching, knowing, etc. It is knowing the mind without lust, kusala citta, kiriya citta, vibhaka citta, and abhyagata citta, as it truly is in accordance with vitaragan cittan, dipajanati of Satipatthana Sutta. Noting and knowing the mind with lust as well as the mind without lust in this manner is Cittanupassana Satipatthana, contemplation of the mind with mindfulness. When ill will arises in the course of noting the rising and falling of the abdomen, has to be noted. The ill will vanish at once, and in its place, what arises? There arise kusala citta, wholesome consciousness of the act of noting. The abhyagata and kusala javana citta of acts of seeing, etc. You know the mind without a will by noting it too. When the mind with delusion, that is, doubtful mind, distracted mind, appears, they are noted as usual and they disappear. In its place, there arise kusala citta of the acts of noting, the abhyagata and kusala javana citta of acts of seeing, etc. Now you know the mind without delusion, vita moha citta, by noting. Further, when sloth and trouble make their appearance while noting the rising and falling of the abdomen, these have to be noted as sloth and trouble. These sloth and trouble vanish away at once, and mindfulness arises in their places. It is noted before you revert to the rising and falling of the abdomen. Again, when engaged in noting the rise and fall of the abdomen, if distraction and restlessness appear, you also note as distraction, restlessness, thinking, etc. When you note in this way, restlessness, despair, your mind remains still and tranquil. This state of mind is also to be noted. When your concentration is good and the mind rests still on the object under contemplation, this quiet mind is also known automatically. Then when restlessness appears, it is also noted and the mind becomes still again. All the changes in the state of mind are heedfully noted. The mind which is noted and contemplated on is called vimutta citta, free of mental defilements. The mind which remains to be noted and contemplated upon is avimutta citta, not free of mental defilements. So you take note of all these states of citta, consciousness. It is how the mind is contemplated on as taught by the Blessed One in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. according to the mind contemplation practice, mind with lust and desire, mind with evil, distracted mind, restless mind, are all of gross variety or larika. When free of those gross mind, there arise in their place kusala citta and abhyagata citta, which are fine minds. So the yogis engaged in watching the phenomena presently taking place perceive that gross mind does not reach the moment of fine mind, etc. So you have to reflect in this way. The gross mind does not reach the moment of arising of fine mind. The fine mind does not reach the moment of arising of the gross mind. They cease and vanish at the respective moment of their arising, and they are of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So Rudy, the gross mind is olarika, gross mind. Olarika and the sukuma is fine. The gross mind does not reach the moment of arising of fine mind, and the fine mind does not reach the moment of arising of gross mind. As soon as you note the gross mind, disappear. So can you follow me? The gross mind does not reach the moment of arising of fine mind. The gross mind does not reach the moment of arising of fine mind. The fine mind does not reach the moment of arising of the gross mind. So every mind, every consciousness you note, and what happened? They disappear, they vanish, they cease and vanish at the respective moment of their arising. And after that, you understand the nature of anicca, dukkha, anatta. Can you follow me? These gross and fine mind cease and vanish, cease and vanish, cease and vanish. Yes, these gross and fine mind cease and vanish at the respective moments of their arising, and they are of the nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, impermanence, suffering, and non-self. So whatever consciousness arises, you have to note. Now you can capture the sometime gross, sometime fine. Whatever the consciousness arises, you capture it, and they disappear and vanish. They cease and vanish at the respective moment of their arising, and then you understand the nature of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. So we have to stop our discourse for today by observing every consciousness at the respective moment of their arising, by observing every phenomena occurring at the six senses, by noting rising, falling, sitting, touching, seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, etc. Continuously and meticulously. May all yogis be liberated from all suffering. May all yogis realize the real peace in the very near future.
Sadhu,